So today I have my first ranged rogue build for leveling, the rapid fire leveling build. Keep in mind, as per usual for all of my builds that are leveling, this is 1 to 50, which means we're going to be focusing on single target damage and mobility, as well as we're only using legendaries from the Codex of Power. Now, we have a ton of builds on the channel, but this is the first ranged rogue build, which I'm pretty excited about. Let's dive into it. Now, for those of you that don't want to sit through the video, I have a link to this build, as well as my spreadsheet that goes through each of the skill points at what level, if you guys want to check that out in the description down below. Let's start off here though. We are going to be picking up Puncture as our basic. This is critical, guys. Basically every leveling build of mine is going to include fundamental Puncture because we just get guaranteed vulnerable whenever we want, wherever we want. This is super powerful for specifically bosses and elites. It's less good for random trash, but we can deal with random trash anyways in other parts of our build. So beginning off, we're gonna go Puncture, Enhanced Puncture, then we're gonna pick up Rapid Fire, and then we're going to go ahead and pick up Fundamental Puncture for that guaranteed vulnerable. After that, we're going to pick up Enhanced Rapid Fire and then Improved Rapid Fire. And this is where things already get interesting because we want guaranteed vulnerable because with this perk, we get 15 energy per cast of rapid fire when it damages a vulnerable enemy. And if you look, it costs 25 energy, which means that we're getting essentially a rapid fire for 10 energy per, which basically gives us permanent energy with other parts of this build, which is so powerful. Okay. Rapid fire is incredibly good for single turret damage, and with that guaranteed vulnerable, we basically can spam it out without even using our inner sight specialization. After we go ahead and pick up Improved Rapid Fire, we can go ahead and pick up Shadow Step and Dash. We're going to be using 2 mobility skills in this build. Then we're going to come back up and finish off Rapid Fire and max it out. We really want to max out our core skill as soon as possible for more damage. After that, we can go ahead and pick up Exploit down here for increased damage to healthy and injured enemies. This is going to be really useful for our later Shadow Imbuement, which we're going to be picking up soon. But after we pick up Exploit, all 3 points, we're going to go 1 point into Weapon Mastery so we can actually unlock Shadow Imbuement. But with Shadow Mastery or a Weapon Mastery, real quick here, highly recommend you run a bow for increased damage to vulnerable enemies. But not only this, when you have a bow, its stat underneath the bow is actually to be increased damage to distant enemies, whereas crossbow is going to be to vulnerable enemies, and you're going to be more often than not against trash, have damage to distant enemies be more useful. So try to run a bow if you can. Crossbows are not super bad, they're actually quite good still, but bows are going to be a little bit better. Then we're going to go ahead and pick up Shadow Imbuement, and we're going to go ahead and pick up Enhanced Shadow Imbuement and Blended Shadow Imbuement. Now, you might be wondering, why are we going with Vulnerable on the Blended Shadow Imbuement if we already have the basic giving us Vulnerable? Good question. This Blended Shadow Imbuement is meant for trash, because when we go ahead and apply Shadow Imbuement, this is meant to go ahead and kill off the trash monsters because it's going to explode, do massive AoE DPS, and we don't really have AoE in Rapid Fire. So we're taking Shadow Imbuement just for that AoE potential, and Rapid Fire is going to deal with bosses on its own. But the key is, after we go ahead and pick up Shadow Imbuement, getting that Blended Shadow Imbuement is going to make Vulnerable apply to every single enemy in the area, making sure that Shadow Imbuement can actually finish everybody off without us spamming out basics. After Blended Shadow Imbuement, we're going to go max out Shadow Imbuement so we can go ahead and get extra AoE DPS. Then we're going to go ahead and pick up Shadow Clone, followed by Prime Shadow Clone and Supreme Shadow Clone. This is going to really solidify our DPS for bosses and any elite packs. We can go ahead and just absolutely crush single targets with this Shadow Clone. I know some people don't like Shadow Clone as much, but there's a few bonuses to Shadow Clone that people don't really consider. The first one is Unstoppable. This is super important to break CC, right? I love having Unstoppable in my build, multiple if I can. And also one of the biggest contributors to kind of slowing you down is going to be those bosses. So despite Rapid Fire being such an amazing single target skill and Shadow Imbuement keeping up with our AoE potential, Shadow Clone basically just allows us to kill bosses in like 5 to 6 seconds, which is absolutely amazing, okay? And this build will do that. On top of that, we're going to pick up Precision Imbuement for additional crit strike chance with our Shadow Imbuement. This combos really nicely with Enhanced Rapid Fire. So with Enhanced Rapid Fire, we can really really increase our crit strike chance already, and then we can increase it even further with precision imbuement. After precision imbuement, we're going to go ahead and finish off weapon mastery for the additional damage, and then we're going to go ahead and put 2 points into malice for additional damage against vulnerable enemies against those bosses. This is going to really help out. Then we're going to pick up precision. This is the key passive we're going to take. Anytime we critical strike with a marksman skill, we're going to gain precision. Precision is going to increase our critical strike damage, and then when we reach maximum precision, we're going to guarantee crit and increase our crit strike damage. This is really nice because we're going to be critting very often. Remember, our rapid fire, each subsequent arrow from rapid fire has 5% increased critical strike chance. So if we have an imbued shadow imbuement, let's say, and we hit a boss, that's already 9%. Let's just, say in our stats, we have, a base amount, let's just use this number, 6%. So we already have that 15%. Then we're going to get additional 5%. On the last arrow, it's going to be 25%. So we're already getting 40% crit strike chance just off our skills and our base amount of crit strike. So we are very commonly going to critical strike, and since we're spamming out rapid fires, we can easily get this precision passive for any sort of elite or boss, which again, this is what this build is meant to do. Shadow imbue all the trash monsters and then go ahead and nuke the bosses, right? Super powerful. After precision, we're going to go back up and finish off malice. Then we're going to go ahead and pick up enhanced dash and shadow crash, which is a very powerful. So enhanced dash, when we dash through someone, they're going to take increased crit strike damage, which we're going to be critting. So it's really nice to dash through elites, bosses, etc. The next one, as I mentioned, is Shadow Crash. When we lucky hit, shadow damage has a 10% chance to stun. This one's not super amazing. We're really picking it up for consuming shadows. The reason why we're picking up consuming shadows is because the only time we're going to run out of energy is when we're killing trash. And so when we have the shadow imbuement explode, we're going to be killing off enemies, generating additional energy, which is going to really help us out. Then we're going to be picking up Adrenaline Rush for additional energy regeneration, again, because we might be running out of energy during the trash phases. As we level up, we're going to get weaker, right? So this is when the energy regeneration is actually necessary. And then we're going to pick up Haste. So when we're above 50% maximum energy, we're going to get movement speed, which is really nice just to scale through dungeons, as well as giving us an increased attack speed when we're below that 50%, which is going to happen during bosses typically. Then we're going to max out dash. And the reason we're maxing out dash is to reduce the cooldown, because dash is going to be our main movement skill. So super powerful build, guys. This is mainly focused, again, around that single target damage, which is 100% going to be your main problem. Keep in mind that when I'm creating builds, you really want to just run through the content and kill those bosses as soon as possible. But if you don't want to do that, and you still want to get some XP from a lot of those monsters, this is where the Shadow Imbuement comes in. This is super powerful to just AoE things down, and overall, it's a very powerful build. As for specialization, I recommend running combo points. Now, typically I'd recommend inner sight for bosses, but since we can keep up vulnerable on bosses, we actually basically have permanent energy anyways. And so combo points is going to work well in general through the boss fight, because we will be hitting those basics every like 2 seconds or so. So it will give us an additional hit of rapid fire, which will increase our crit strike chance, our damage overall in general. And also combo points are going to work well basically for any build in the trash clearing phase, so this is going to help out there as well. So definitely recommend combo points. You can run preparation, because this ultimate will go ahead and reset our shadow imbuement and our mobility skills. So if you run preparation, this actually works really well for just standard dungeon clearing, because we can reset our mobility skills, because we can go ahead and reduce our ultimate skill cooldown whenever we spend a ton of energy, which we will be, because guess what? Even though we're getting our energy back, right, from our rapid fire, we still spend 25 energy per. So we spend 25, we get 15 back. So we actually can go to preparation pretty quickly. So combo points in general, but preparation can be used, especially if you know how to use your skills properly and get through those dungeons very quickly. Now let's talk legendary aspects. These are all included in the Codex of Powers. These are all guaranteed for you to acquire after, you spend a little bit of time in the game. First one is Edge Master's Aspect. This is going to give us additional damage increased based on our primary resource. We have a very high resource generation in the build, and also we're going to get the energy back from rapid fire. So we're going to get a lot of value from this one, okay? This one definitely wants to go on the amulet, because you want to get more value from this aspect more than any other aspect in the build. There isn't really an aspect that works exceptionally well with rapid fire that you can get from the codex, so Edge Masters it is. Next aspect is aspect of arrow storms. Whenever we hit a marksman skill, we have a 10% chance to create an arrow storm on lucky hits, dealing damage. Our basic and our core skill are both marksman skills, so both of these are going to have a chance to proc that arrow storms, giving us roughly about a 4 to 5% chance of giving that arrow storm just on any hit. That's going to be pretty good, because remember, it's 10% of the lucky hit chance here, which is already a pretty low chance. Next one up is going to be Ravenous Aspect. Killing a vulnerable enemy is going to give us energy regeneration. This is a critical one for dungeon or any sort of trash clearing, because again, Shadow Imbuement is going to explode. It's going to go ahead and make everyone vulnerable. Then we're going to kill those enemies with shadow explosions, giving us energy regeneration, which is going to help us in the dungeons. We already have good energy regeneration for boss fights because of the energy kind of refund. So we don't need to get too many energy regeneration aspects, but this one's going to really help us in the dungeons and trash clearing in general. Then we're going to be running Aspect of the Expectant. Because we're going to be basicing to apply vulnerable, this is just going to give us a little bit of extra passive damage, minimum 5%, right? But it can definitely go ahead and increase up to, 10-15% if you're casting a couple of basics for combo points, right? Then we're going to be running Rapid Aspect, same purpose for kind of the aspect of the expectant. We want to get our basics out as quick as possible so that we can go ahead and start rapid firing. So Rapid Aspect is going to get those basics out even quicker, which is going to be really, really nice. There's a ton of other aspects that you can run in terms of defensive ones and utility ones and all that good stuff, but I first typically like to only apply legendary aspects that you're not going to be replacing, right? So you're not going to be replacing your daggers or your swords, because you're not going to be using your daggers or swords as DPS. So you only have to replace your ranged and your armor, because your amulet and rings typically don't have to be replaced all that often either. So this is going to be really, really nice options. And of course, you can, if you get a nice aspect like basic attacks, give you a damage reduction, that's a really good one, etc., etc. Let's dive into the stats and the gems that we're going to want to use. So for the weapon, we want to go ahead and pick up critical strike damage to vulnerable enemies with the emerald. Again, we're going to be critting so often with our enhanced crit rate that this is going to give us a lot of extra damage. Rubies in the armor for just extra maximum life. There's not really a good option here that's going to give us extra damage, so armor it is, or maximum life it is. Then jewelry, extra armor. We're going to have pretty, I guess you say lower armor, because we are not necessarily optimizing for that, so giving us additional armor is going to help with that damage reduction overall. So those are the gems. As for stats, obviously, crit strike chance and crit strike damage is going to be exceptionally good in this build, because we have a lot of crits going. Damage versus distant is also going to be extremely good, because this is just going to give us damage increasing if we are not in melee range with enemies, which we're not normally going to be. Also, damage with core skill, super powerful, as well as damage with imbued, because we're going to be imbuing our rapid fire. And lastly, vulnerable damage. There's all sorts of goes on, like damage versus healthy, etc., but vulnerable damage in particular is going to help us out against bosses. So that's going to be the complete build, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed. I know some of you were asking about a ranged rogue build. I was debating between going penetrating shot or rapid fire, because I think those two are the best options. But I figured, you know what? We're going to go for rapid fire, because I think it's going to be better for those bosses. And we already have enough AoE with Shadow Imbuement, which is going to be really, really solid. And the amount of mobility this build brings is so strong. Overall, I've really enjoyed this build when I did play it in the betas, and I think you all will as well. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all for the next one.